Welcome back to Skylander Smash, everybody. Today we're covering the pipin' hot elven archer himself, Flameslinger.
My vision is augmented.
A Skylander of the fire element, obviously, Flameslinger dispatches his enemies by toasting them with blazing arrows fired from his bow. He's so good at hitting his mark, he purposely blindfolds himself just to show off his phenomenal accuracy. Now, making a moveset for Flameslinger may prove to be a bit of a challenge for a few reasons. First, to my chagrin, I may have to repeat what I did in the Trigger Happy video and present two unique movesets for Flameslinger, one for solely physical attacks and one just for his bow. Second, in Smash, while there are certainly fighters that use bows in their movesets, such as Link or Byleth, none use them as their primary means of attack. The closest fighter to fit that description is Pit/Dark Pit. However, I think they're kind of a cheap comparison for a number of reasons. For one, they mainly use their bows as a blade weapon. They're even able to take it apart into two blades. Also, they have to conjure their arrows, and their bows don't have a tangible bowstring. And to top it off, none of their basic moves involve them shooting arrows of any kind. So while they may possess some moves that could be worth carrying over, overall, I don't think they're a good frame of reference for Flameslinger. That's everything I wanted to cover, so enough chit-chat, and let's hop right into it. But before we start, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. So to start, our first moveset will represent the bow and arrow attacks. These will primarily consist of Flameslinger firing arrows from his bow in various ways, as well as even using the bow itself as a weapon to attack. And the second moveset will represent the physical attacks Flameslinger can do himself. Unfortunately, in the games, Flameslinger never attacks his enemies physically, always opting to take out his enemies with his bow and other abilities. But conveniently, Flameslinger is also equipped with magic boots, which allow him to run at fast speeds while leaving a blazing trail of fire in his wake. It would make sense if the majority of Flameslinger's melee attacks would involve him using those boots to perform flaming kicks. Finally, some basic moves will not be present in the bow moveset, mainly because in my opinion, it wouldn't be necessary in those cases. And speak of the devil, the neutral attack is one of those moves. The attack itself is a 3-stage choosable jab, the first 2 hits being a roundhouse kick followed by a leg sweep. The move can either end with a more powerful roundhouse kick, or a series of fast kicks before ending with the previously mentioned roundhouse kick. And as we've already established, the kicks deal fire damage as well. All of this is emulated from Min Min's neutral attack. I chose her as a frame of reference, since her jabs only involve kicking. Let's move on to the tilts. Now if we're strictly going with just kick attacks, this is more or less pretty straightforward. Forward tilt and down tilt were pretty much a given, roundhouse kick and sliding kick respectively. Up tilt was a bit more challenging, but I settled for a butterfly kick. But remember that we're dealing with two movesets here. So now we're focusing on attacks involving the bow and arrow. While you're probably expecting moves involving Flameslinger shooting arrows from his bow, for the tilts, I'm actually going to pivot and suggest moves involving him using his bow as a physical weapon. For example, Byleth's Nair is them spinning their bow in a circle, hitting enemies several times. But we can't look to other fighters that use their weapons in a similar way. In particular, Palutena twirls her staff for all of her tilts, albeit telekinetically. Regardless, Flameslinger could just spin his bow manually in the same manner. Up next is the dash attack, which is another move that doesn't need a bow counterpart. Another simple and clear-cut choice, probably the most common dash attack, which is a basic running kick. Moving on to the smash attacks, which once again will not be present in the bow and arrow moveset. I'll explain further once we get to these specials. All of Flameslinger's smash attacks will be a kick of some kind. To be brief, these 3 attacks are the most common kick attacks in their respective category, performed by fighters like Fox and Kirby. Going more in depth, forward smash is a jumping side kick, up smash is a backflipping kick, and down smash is a split kick. Now we'll be covering the aerials. First, we've already gone over the Nair, which is Flameslinger twirling his bow like Byleth. It's so clear-cut that I'm not going to bother with the other moveset, because it was just going to be a sex kick anyway. As for the rest, let's start with the melee attacks first. For forward and back air, I was just going to go with the most common kick attacks for those moves, such as the drop kick or roundhouse kick. Although I did find some unique kicks that could also be used. For instance, I thought the 2 consecutive kicks performed by fighters like Joker could be a good forward air. I'm also a fan of the lunging kick, done by fighters like Zelda or Palutena. We could even incorporate a sweet spot near his foot, which is shared with the aforementioned Zelda's forward and back air, known as the lightning kick. In his case, it would probably be known as the blazing kick. Up air is more or less in the same situation. We're settling for the most common choice, which is the backflip kick. And also like before, I found a slightly more creative pick for the up air, which is the scissor kick, done by fighters like Sonic. And lastly, for down air, I opted for a stall then fall, a diagonal dive kick, which coincidentally is also performed by Sonic. I haven't forgotten the bow moveset. Unlike the tilts, these moves are actually going to involve shooting flaming arrows. All of the aerial moves are basically Flameslinger shooting 3 arrows in the designated directions. Not only does this reference one of his upgrades from the games, but it also mirrors Villagers/Isabel's forward and back air, where they shoot pellets from their slingshots. Finishing off the basic moves, we have the grab, pummel, and throws. To no surprise, the grab is just a plain old grab, and the pummel is a knee attack. Starting once again with the melee moveset, both forward and back throw are just simple kicks in the respective direction. Up throw is parroting Sheik's, where he performs a handstand and kicks his opponent upwards. And finally, down throw is an axe kick, which coincidentally is also shared with Sheik. Another option is Kirby's, where he rapidly kicks his opponent on the ground. Now onto the bow moveset. First, up and back throw are all pretty much Flameslinger tossing their opponent in those directions and shooting them with at least one arrow. As for the down throw, he places them on the ground and shoots them, releasing them afterward. All of the listed moves were inspired from Fox, where he throws his opponents in the same way and later shoots at them with his blaster. As for forward throw, there aren't any throws in that category where a fighter tosses and later shoots their target, so let's just ignore it for this moveset. Finally, the edge attack is just a forward kick. And that's all the basic moves, which also marks the end of covering 2 movesets. Like I said in my Trigger Happy video, the optimal set of basic moves for Flameslinger is a mix of the two. All that's left are the specials and final smash. As always, we start with the neutral, which is probably the most obvious move of this whole skill set, Flameslinger's fire arrows. How the move functions is essentially a more powerful version of Young Link's neutral special. The more the move is charged, the quicker the arrow travels, and the more damage it deals. In Flameslinger's case, his arrows do a lot more damage, potentially KOing players at a medium to high damage percentage when fully charged. In practice, it's like a slightly less powerful version of Violet's fully charged arrows. In addition, he can also change the direction he's aiming, allowing him to fire upwards and backwards. This detail was taken from Pit/Dark Pit's neutral, although to be clear, Flameslinger cannot change the trajectory of the arrow after it's been fired. It's also the reason why I didn't bother to make smash attacks for the bow moveset. Next, his side special is his Flame Dash. Flameslinger is able to sprint forward, leaving behind a blazing trail of fire in his wake, which constantly burns enemies when caught. The trail of fire lasts for a brief amount of time, I would say around 3 to 5 seconds. Additionally, while this aspect doesn't exist in the main games, I would say that while charging, Flameslinger is surrounded by a flaming aura, which allows him to deal fire damage once he makes contact with an opponent. This move is basically a flaming version of Bowser Jr.'s Clown Car. Next is his up special / recovery, which focuses mainly on Flameslinger's magic boots. Since those boots produce fire, I thought that maybe he could use that to his advantage when it comes to reaching great heights. So his up special is releasing 2 flame waves from his boots to boost himself upward. This is performed in the same manner as Robin's recovery, Elwind. The differences being that Flameslinger's has unlimited usage, and of course, the fire damage. Last on the docket is the down special, which is his volley shot. This allows him to shoot a rain of fire arrows from above in an arc, potentially hitting players multiple times. The move can also be held to increase its trajectory so it can hit players at a farther distance. Last up is the final smash, which, by the way, this is the first move from Skylanders I've used as a final smash that had essentially little to no change. Flameslinger's final smash is Supernova, where he draws a flame circle at his current position with his boots, after which a pillar of fire erupts in its place, causing devastating damage to any unfortunate players trapped within. This may also look familiar to Smash players, as Ken's final smash, Shinryuken, is basically the same thing. Of course, we can't forget the various animations and cosmetics. Side note, this is probably the most original material I've made for a Skylander when it comes to aesthetics. First, as always, is the on-screen appearance, which I'm actually pretty proud of. It starts with Flameslinger flame dashing onto the stage, with the signature trail of fire behind him. Once the fire dissipates, there's still a little fire on the side of one of his boots, but Flameslinger pats it out quickly by stomping it on the ground. I really like this intro because it's got a lot of personality and some humor to it. Let's move on to the taunts. The first one is him holding his bow to his heart in a sort of salute. This is taken from a very brief animation in his first trailer. Second taunt is him spinning his bow before striking a pose, referencing one of Dark Pit's taunts. And the final taunt is something that's a bit out of left field. Flameslinger takes the arrow currently in his bow and stabs forward with it. This can inflict a small amount of damage onto players, placing itself among the taunts that deal damage, like Luigi's down taunt. This is meant to reference the sniper in Team Fortress 2, specifically his taunt when holding the Huntsman, a bow weapon, where he thrusts the arrow forward, instantly killing enemies in range. Obviously, this won't translate to Smash. Next is the crowd cheer, which yet again is another basic chant of Flameslinger's name. Flameslinger, Flameslinger, Flameslinger. Moving on to the victory poses. The first pose references his trailer for Giants, where he flame dashes back and forth until firing 3 arrows from his bow. The next one is completely made by yours truly. Flameslinger is first seen with an arrow, where he then strikes it like it's a match, lighting it on fire. The camera then freeze frames on Flameslinger right after he fires it. The last pose begins on a shot of a target, like an archery. A flaming arrow then pierces through the center, which later causes the whole thing to ignite and turn to ashes. The camera then zooms in on a grinning Flameslinger and freeze frames. This is loosely inspired from one of the highlight intros of the hero Hanzo from Overwatch, specifically the ending shot. The target can also be replaced with a training dummy, where the arrow goes through the head, causing it to immolate. All that's left are the costumes, to which there aren't really that many official ones for Flameslinger. First is Cupid Flameslinger, a Valentine's Day costume introduced in Skylanders Lost Islands. As you can see, there are hearts on his clothes, as well as the arrowheads also being hearts. And the only other official costume is Awakened Flameslinger from Ring of Heroes, where he's equipped with more armor, a fancier bow, and face paint around his eyes. Now for the custom ones. First is a dark orange variant, referencing the evil variant made by Chaos, the Evil Pyro Archer. Next is a weird one, a red and gray costume with spike bracelets, referencing Bobbin Rood, a drow villain from the 3DS version of Trap Team who attacks with a bow, also an obvious play on Robin Hood. And speaking of the drow, or basically evil elves, the next costume is a yellow recolor, referencing the drow archer enemy from Giants. Next is a costume inspired by the Skylanders Stealth Elf, where he's dressed in ninja garb. I would also love to see Flameslinger both blindfolded and wearing a ninja mask. Next is simply a blue recolor, referencing Snapshot, a Skylander from Trap Team. And the last one I want to cover isn't even inspired from Skylanders, as it's just Flameslinger in a green tunic, obviously referencing Link from The Legend of Zelda. Once again, we are done with another Skylander in Smash video. Next one we'll cover was the first Skylander I played with, besides the trio from the Spiral's Adventure starter pack. Thanks again for watching, I hope you stuck around till the end, and I will see all you magnificent people soon.